Well, again, hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today where we are going to be focusing on customer service, but with a little bit of a different spin. We're going to be talking about the generational influences and how we reach our different customers and opening our mind and our awareness to that. As most of you know here on the call today, we now have not only more generations in the workplace actively working than we ever have before, but just engaged in life in general. So I think this is a topic that all of us are interested in for different reasons and different aspects. So thank you for taking time today during your lunch hour if you are here on the East Coast of the United States. I know we have people from all over. So some of you it may be morning, some of you it may be evening, but thank you so much for joining us here today for our webinar. My name is Michelle Braden, and I'm going to take you through just a few housekeeping things before we jump in. So as you know, today this is our Lunch and Learn hour where we do our webinars. We offer 4 webinars a year. This is our first one in 2017. And just to share with you our next upcoming webinars, the next one is going to be June 21st. And it is on critical thinking skills and how are we using those skills. Are we not using them? Are they potentially holding us back? And also we'll be talking a little bit there about how we develop those skills. You know, we talk about a lot of things that we're learning and developing, but rarely do we talk about thinking and critical thinking. On September 20th, we'll be talking about organizational commitment and encouraging stewardship. How do we develop this sort of commitment within an organization, whether you're a large organization or a small organization? Are you committed to the organization that you work with as a leader? Because it's pretty hard to inspire any other sort of organizational commitment if you yourself don't feel that. So that is our September 20th. And then, well, it looks like we've accidentally got the date written down here twice. So the next one is in December, so my apologies for that. And that one is on a spirit of ownership. So how do we lead with a spirit of ownership? Whether, you know, we have part ownership in a company or not, how do we actually ourselves begin to take on that mentality of leading as if we are owners? And then how do we incorporate for our team members how to work into an organization from a place of ownership? You know, when we own something, it's so different. I don't know if you have the difference between owning a car versus leasing a car, owning a house versus renting a house. We definitely take a different mindset when we own something. So we're going to be talking about that in our last webinar of the year. So all of those you can register on MSBCoach.com. And so if you just click on our webinars and upcoming webinars, there's a link there. I know these are really long links, so just disregard those and just go ahead and go to the MSB Coach website and you can register straight from there. So also wanted to share with you that we do have 3 books that are available on Amazon, and they are all focused on 3 different aspects of leadership. The first one is Stand Out, that focuses on self-leadership. Second one is Dare to Make a Difference, which focuses on team leadership. And the third one is Bottom Line, which focuses on organizational leadership. We call these 3 books together our 99-day leadership journey. And the reason for that is these books are designed to take 33 days to go through each book. And we've done that in a way because it's built around creating new leadership habits. So you will read an entry, and then there's activities for you to do that go along with that entry. So you're actually working to create new patterns of thinking, behaviors, and literally new neurological pathways, which is how each of these books are designed. So you can check those out on Amazon. Also, as we go through the day, you'll notice that everybody is muted. The reason that we do that is just to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, we really do want engagement and interaction. And so we have poll questions that will pop up. We really encourage you to jump in there, answer those questions right away. But also, if you do have questions, to please type those in. And Stacia and I will be working here together. So she is actually our trainer today. I'm just the host here with you. So she will, I will be watching as those questions come in to make sure that we get those, that we're able to address them. So please don't hesitate. And then also at the end of the webinar, after it's over, if you think of some things that you forgot to ask, please shoot us an email, ask us those things, because we definitely do these because we want to be engaged with you. We want to help you grow and develop. And, of course, we're all learning here together in this process. Also, if you have comments, suggestions, feel free to type those in as well. So, again, welcome. Today I'm very pleased to have my colleague and my friend, Stacia Rice. Stacia and I have been working together now for 5 years. And so it has been a really exciting journey working together. I love Stacia's passion, her commitment, the way her mind works. So I definitely enjoyed working with her and learning from her. So Stacia, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate it.
And my name is Michelle Braden, and I am CEO of MSBCoach. And like I said, I am going to be your host today and handing this off to Stacia to bring us to some expertise in generational influence and reaching and retaining our customers. So at this point, Stacia, I am going to hand it off to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, this has been such an interesting topic for me. I really dove into it over the last year or so. And, in fact, we have a more robust class on just working within different generations in our workplace. But one of the things that struck me was that, as we in all businesses are trying to serve and or retain our clients, how do we do that in a way that makes sense from a generational standpoint? So today, what I'd like to talk about is, just so that we have some level setting, talking about each of the generational cohorts. And because even though the youngest of our generations are really part of our workforce and full force, they are part of our economy. And so we are going to talk about everybody from the traditionalists all the way down to Gen Z today, and I'll highlight some of their traits. And then as we talk about each of those, I really want to focus in and hone in on strategies that we can all use to reach and retain each of these customers. And then I wanted to follow up at the end, just talking a little bit about how we can step back and think about all of these ideas from our own perspective. So the first thing I like to think about when I'm coming up with a problem is, why the heck should I care?
Well, that's it. What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? And what is important? And so at the end of the day, for us to be successful in our businesses, whatever they may be, we are generally serving some kind of client. It may be another business. It may be an actual person. It might be a service. It might be a good. However, we are going to be touching at some point up to 5 generations, and they're being represented in our workplace and our marketplace. Fact is that each of these cohorts have inherent traits that dictate some of their different expectations and preferences about how that they want to be interacted with. And if you're going to be competitive in today's market, the fact is you can't be stagnant. You have to customize your efforts in order to engage and retain each person. At the end of the day, we all want to be treated how we want to be treated.
And Stacia, you said something that really just triggered a thought in my mind that I don't think I'd really thought about, and that is some of the younger generations that aren't even in the workforce yet, but yet they are influencing the money that's being made. Mommy, can I have this? Can I have that? And then even at the junior high level, the high school level, goodness, we know the college level, all the money that's went into and all their sports events and all of that. So yeah, that was a great awareness. Thank you.
So to run down the generations that we're going to be talking about, the traditionalists, and some of these dates here are subject to interpretation. You can read a million different ways. Have people put a line in the sand in terms of each of the generations. But typically, traditionalists were born prior to 1946. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1960s. The 64 Generation X really is in that 64 to 79 time frame. Millennials, anywhere from 1980 to 2000, and then our Gen X are folks that were born after 2001, and let's face it, that was kind of a little bit longer than I think we all realize, 16 to 17 years ago, at the bare minimum. And so it's something, it's kind of really fast, does it now? So the first thing that I did want to just mention before we get into this is I get a lot of questions about generational diversity and saying, aren't we just stereotyping? Isn't this just a life stage or something like that. But what I think is important to remember is that it is just a component of diversity, right? And so with all of the diversity aspects that you should be thinking about in terms of your customer base, and that can be anything from ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic, religious beliefs, that diversity is important not only in our workforces, but in recognizing that your customer base does likely have those same diversity aspects. And yes, some of these traits and or preferences are influenced by life stage or choices that they've made in their lives, but also the values that they hold, and that may vary depending on where in the world you live and the type of people that you were brought up with, and the values in which were there. A lot of the things that make up human beings are all of these things, but also truly personality has a huge indicator. So I say all of this because, yes, a lot of times this can feel like a stereotype, and it could feel like we have some sort of bias. But what we're trying to do today is really just focus on the idea that having increased awareness of some of these common traits, not all persons in any one cohort is going to identify with every single trait, just like not every person of any one particular race is going to identify in the same way, but recognizing their own internal biases and also and understanding some of their biases will help us to just make more informed decisions. Okay. All right, so let's actually start with our first poll. So I am curious, and this is really just to lead into the conversation about what our life is going to look like here soon. And so I'm going to ask, what do you think of the percentage of our population will be millennial by 2020? And I don't know about you, Michelle, but 2020 sounds like so far away, but it's only 3 years from now.
Yeah.
I think that's the part where you start feeling a little old.
So those of you who, if you haven't, please jump in and answer this poll question. Let's see if we're sharing. Oh, wow, 100%. Thank you so much.
You all are on top of it.
You are. All right, so do you want me to share?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so 25% of you thought 25%, 63% thought 50%, and 13% thought 75%. Well, that is very interesting.
Now, okay, so unfortunately, so just so you all know, and my apologies, Go-To webinar has updated with probably someone younger than me. And so I'm learning still here how to manage with all of the updates. There we go. Now everyone is seeing that. So I just wanted them to take just a moment and see the results.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for jumping in there. And I actually would love to congratulate the one or two people that got it right. Actually, we can back in here to the.
Okay.
Let's see. All right. So if you take a look there, actually, our population by percentage will be somewhere around 75% millennial coming up here soon in 2020. Right? What's going to happen to the rest of it?
Where are we going?
What happened? And it is a sad state of affairs, but it is the oldest and most real thing, is that there is nothing certain in life but death and taxes, as we come up here on April 15th. But so what's really important, and really just thinking about how all this impacts, is that at the end of the day, we have just such a huge percentage of population. A lot of that really comes down to the fact that all of the different generations actually have different amounts of people in them, obviously, and so it's not just a linear kind of situation. So, all right, I think I'm ready to move on. All right, so as we go through the generational cohorts, I just wanted to share with you again. We're gonna start from the beginning, the traditionalists, going to the boomers, Gen X, and millennials. So, when you think of traditionalists, some of the things that you might be popping into your head would be some of the influences that they had. The technology of their day was the radio, and very influential. World War II is part of their day-to-day life and impacts very seriously the way that they think. And so some of the traditionalist cohort traits are that we find them to be very disciplined and dutiful, and to be more conformist as a rule than breaking out on their own. They seem to be very loyal and conservative and very patriotic. And part of that has to do with the types of messages that they were hearing. So if you're thinking about being in a war and it took the entire country in order to be successful, and thinking about that was really probably the last world war that we all agreed upon, from the last war in which there wasn't, at least in our country, a lot of strife over. So make do or do without, stay in line, sacrifice, be heroic, consider the common good. So these are things that traditionalists grew up with, and part of being a cohort is when you're actually growing up and forming your own thoughts and feelings, the things that influence you, the values and the information that's around you really stays with you all through your life from those formative years. So when we're thinking about reaching a traditionalist audience, a customer, and this may be someone who is a customer or someone who you'd like to be, just be aware that they're more likely or far less likely to make an impulsive purchase. So targeting them with more traditional marketing tools as flyers and newsletters and postcards really allows them to do the thinking and the research that they're going to be interested in doing so, and in a lot of ways will be in alignment with some of those more conservative values. You're not likely to be quick to judge. Just from a purely practical standpoint, consider using larger font and make it easier to read. And to be really frank, use grammar and language that they're going to appreciate. So we understand that today's younger people, are used to communicating in 146 characters and are very happy with you are instead of your. But at the end of the day, these traditionalists are not going to appreciate that.
Well, and even the address, like, hey, everyone, which feels like, and it's so inclusive, and our younger generation is much more inclusive of, hey, literally, hey, everyone. But, yeah, for a traditionalist, it's not, hey, everyone.
I probably would like to hear Dear Margaret.
Right, right, exactly, yeah.
And the other thing, instead of, some of the research is showing that instead of using a collage of images, one single image that sort of conveys a really specific emotion actually tends to reach traditionalists a little bit more. And I have to imagine that it has a little bit to do with the fact that we are used to so much information, and I say we because I'm not a traditionalist, but, as someone who is used to consuming information and images very, very quickly, that might be uncomfortable for traditionalists who, TV was not even a thing when they grew up. So obviously they're adapting, and that's the other thing that I think is important to remember is that, with reaching and focusing on traditionals is do not assume that they are not technologically savvy or not in the real world.
That's a really good point.
It is not at all that. In fact, they are very much, I would dare say that most have adapted to the fast pace of life and the information. They're just not necessarily going to gravitate towards having that type of thing.
And that's all happening so subconsciously.
Yes, that we feel that, great grandma isn't able to keep up. Well, she is, and she's smart too, and very discerning. And so part of what retaining a traditionalist customer is about is that personal attention, and that really goes back to, quite frankly, a more slower pace of life. Let's face it. There was a time in which you walked into the store and you had a conversation, and you got all the thing that every need met by one person, but it's a conversation. It wasn't, just an email. Again, treating them as the competent individuals that they are. This isn't just because you are older doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't able to interact. And again, these strategies are not about sort of placating to, an inequity. It's really just serving someone's preference.
Good point.
Yeah. Making them feel special is important as far as traditionalists, and it goes back to that personal attention. And being patient and delivering high touch over high tech is again sort of that idea of it may be that this is, that they are happy to be working on a computer, but it does take them a little bit longer. Perhaps their eyesight isn't as good. I mean, those are just practicalities, and so just being patient is important. some of the technical skills can actually be really enhanced by screen sharing technology and remote assistance. So just some interesting ways to think about retaining a traditionalist customer. So I'm going to move into the baby boomers, and as you think about baby boomers, this is a time in which our country was now moving from scarcity to prosperity, winning the war and taking on the world and the moon, and all of the different changes that came with television and all of the different social changes that were happening. For boomers, this was a time of self-awareness, and this is, the first time in our country really that you even heard of self-help books, or this idea that you had any sort of thought of what you wanted and how you wanted to do it. Now, keeping in mind that this prosperity is going to lead a little bit towards indulgence and expectations that we don't have to do without. There's enough, and I would like to do that. Television and marketing played a huge role as it boomed here in the baby boomer, and thinking about how marketing has changed so very significantly through television. This was sort of the beginning of that. These types of ideas were coming not only in voices but in pictures at a much more rapid pace in your own living room.
So would this be the Magnet era when we think of
a little bit?
Yeah, seriously, yeah, for sure.
And so you've got this idea of activism, and that we can change the world. And by the way, you probably should. Sexual revolution of having more equality. Some of the messages that baby boomers are hearing in their formative years were, you can be anything you want to be, and you should change the world, and you also should be working well with others. This was the first time actually that children in classrooms that were now filled with a lot more children and of one specific grade were working in teams. And so having that sort of being able to work well with others was a new thing to be grading children on, I guess you could say, expecting to be living up to expectations, and then of course the idea of duck and cover being still not a safe world. So as a cohort, all of those influences have a lot to do with the sort of inherent optimism of baby boomers, that they are also very achievement oriented and tend to be self-important to the extent to which you're meant to be changing the world. And by the way, we went to the moon, and we made huge strides in technology, and so there's some credence behind that. Individuality is an important trait for this particular cohort, as well as a consumptive nature, and so that really impacts their spending habits. And as clients and customers, that's something to be thinking about. Obviously, this is going to be a cohort that is more likely to spend, more likely to be out there as consumers. And this idea of being cool, the 60 is the new 40. Well, and this gentleman, at the end of the day, there is this sense of very prolonged youthfulness that, quite frankly, you can see by evidence in our beauty and our what is it, a $3 billion or $300 billion a year industry in being youthful and looking your best. Well, that's driven, not just in part to the traditionalists. I would dare say that the boomers were definitely as part of that, and as we, as a society, understanding that is definitely an influential aspect of it.
Well, you saying that, Dacia, I mean, it just is amazing to me. And I'm an older Xer. I'm right on the cusp of a boomer and an Xer. But I think about just the difference, like with my mom in her, mid-70s now, and how she looks and takes care of herself. And when my grandma, I remember, which, she has passed now, but when she was 45, I thought she was, sorry, not 45, about 52. I thought she was so old. And my mom looks younger than her, 20 years 20 years her senior now. Just, the part of it's the mindset. Part of it, of course, is our health care and all of these things.
Absolutely. Well, but it is a mindset of, longevity. We do live longer, and we want to live better, right? For those years. So that is to say, when we're reaching our boomer clients, it's important to be thinking about making the product information available online through calls and email. And really the focus is here just giving diversification, because at this stage and age, they are going to be much more technology savvy, but at the same time, there's going to be this idea that, well, it didn't always exist online, so I probably want to be able to get a phone call or get, to have some personal information. And at the end of the day, face-to-face communication will more than likely seal the deal. And again, this more personal touch is more likely to be preferred over total online information and selling.
And there again, like you said, that's not to mean that they can't do that by any means at all.
But it allows, the questions to be asked. And knowing that they are also going to be interested in what your business stands for. And this goes back to that sort of activism. And in one thing that I have always found very, very interesting is how similar the boomers are to the younger generations, the millennials, who are very much in alignment with changing the world and what your business stands for, and buying based on some of those things. I've always thought it was so interesting how everything comes back around, does it not?
Well, and the boomers and the millennials are two of the biggest cohorts that we have had.
Absolutely.
In, what is it, almost 100 years?
Yeah.
Those two cohorts.
They are both, they are the two largest. Understanding also that discounts and bargain deals are likely actually, and any more than any other demographic appeal to them. And part of that is the consumerism, it's not my opinion, it is catching up with boomers, right? So they're having to work longer. This idea that they're more likely to spend than they are to save. Certainly getting a deal at this point in time is certainly of value. And so I think just recognizing that.
Well, and some of those boomers that are right there at the cusp of the boomer and traditionalists too, that
looking at retirement.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And not only that, but and part of this goes back to that face-to-face communication, but recognize that these are very highly networked customers and more likely to take the time and spread the word about your business, good or bad, on social media. So it's not that they aren't there, and they're actually more engaged in some ways than some of the other demographics. So as we know, like a good testimonial can be great, and a not so great one is not. So being aware of that. And when you're thinking about your clients who are boomers and keeping them, understand that they are also likely or have been adopting technology and have a can-do attitude, and often will like to dig in and sort of figure something on their own. But basically, they're looking for the information that they need to be able to make an informed decision. And they are going to expect that 24/7 availability, first call resolution, performance. So, the expectations are high. Do value their time and be solution oriented. And so, those are, to me, somewhat what I would say feel very common as like how you would provide customer service. But I think that's in large part because as an Xer, I grew up working and also learning that was how you did things. And so it shows me very strongly that is expectations of that generation, and how our workforce as well as our customer service as it's been provided is in alignment with that. So as Gen X, as we move into that, you can see all of the influences here. And Gen X, being actually one of the smallest of the generations, being influenced by music and strife, that, as we go through this recession, inflation, stagflation, fallen leaders, this Nixon and all of the folks that essentially this time frame as Gen Xers were growing up, you're seeing a lot more latchkey kids because of the increase in divorce. AIDS has now become an epidemic, and so there's actually a lot of negativity in this particular generation culture, and so that has led, in part to this idea that they're street smart survivalists having to sort of make do as latchkey kids and figure things out on their own. And of course now it's the beginning of the PC boom, which has had lasting impacts. But part of what you're hearing at this time, if you were growing up during this time, is don't count on it. Heroes don't exist. Be real. Always take care of yourself. and always ask why. So because of that, the cohort tends to be identified as very independent, very skeptical. Disloyal is one of the things that has been they've been labeled. Technologically savvy, obviously, as the PCs and technology became part of our day-to-day. That is part of it. As Gen X, they tend to be institutionally disenfranchised, not interested in so much in being quote-unquote part of the band. So in order to reach an Xer, know that they're not likely to just want to follow the trends or the styles. They're not going to be terribly easily convinced, and so avoiding hardcore sales tactics. And as an Xer, I can tell you that is the first way to turn me off. I don't even want to continue a conversation if I feel like you're trying to sell me something. But wait, if you find out. Exactly. And, because they tend to be pretty skeptical, they are also more likely to want to get their information online and assess it themselves. So doing that and allowing them, I hear from a lot of Xers, they don't want to talk to anybody to get done what it is they want to get done. So just know that you're going to want to make sure that if you have information to provide, it should be in the online format so that they can do that. We also like for things to be very streamlined and their systems and processes to be simple. Definitely, this is an informal, casual, sort of high-tech group that's a lot, very comfortable in more casual conversation styles. Something to consider here is that you would combine traditional marketing efforts with the digital promotions like Facebook and email and online advertisements. The online is definitely going to be more appealing, but at the end of the day, some of those traditional marketing efforts also allows them to avoid the hardcore sales. Looking at providing service to a wide range of support channels, make sure that you allow them time to get questions answered and to gather the information that they want. Because of their skepticism, they're going to likely want to be well informed before making a decision. Making sure that you're fast and efficient, multiple options, give them an option to pay a bill without talking to a person. Provide information and choices in real time instead of a callback. So just like many people, we tend to be impatient. We're not the only cohort, but we would rather that first touch information as well. Moving on into millennials, again, this has been one of the, when we talk about generations, this is the one that's always tricky for everybody. Really tricky because we're all trying to figure out how to work with this quote-unquote new generation, and it feels very different, but in most of my research I found that there's a ton of relationships, and it makes a lot of sense that boomers, being the parents more likely than not of millennials, that they do have some similarities and things like that, so there's a lot of commonalities. But some of the influences, obviously, being online all day, every day, looking for those likes and instant feedback, where stars and from pop and also sports tend to be very important. This idea of tattoos is there's this informality and a more wider acceptance of casualness or differences in this generation. So some of the factors of the informational revolution, being highly overscheduled and high expectations of this group, also having an egalitarian parenting, and for the big word of the day, that really is just giving. This was sort of one of the first generations where they had a choice about anything, and it was expected that they could voice that choice about what was for dinner or where they were going to go to school or what are we going to do on vacation, right? Yeah. I don't remember ever having quite frankly a lot of vacations, but and so the idea is that it was wherever mom and dad said. Well, and one of the things that is most often talked about when I'm teaching this class is that why does it feel like they get to have an opinion, or they want to have an opinion about everything? And it's like, well, if you've been able to have an opinion since you were a little wee one, then it feels like you should, especially in the workplace. So regardless of whether or not you've been there 2 years, 2 months, your opinion should matter. This prosperity and opportunity, happen again in this generation as they've been growing up. And so it has also created a consumer mindset, and this is being a technology dependent, not just acclimated, but dependent cohort. It definitely influences both their spending habits and that. And so some of the message that they're going to be hearing during this time is that that you're special, that you're leaving no one behind. You should be connected 24/7 to people, and that's truly the first time in our world that we've even had the ability to do that.
Yes, you're right.
And that you should be achieving now. So you don't need to be waiting until you're in your 30s or 40s in order to actually do something in this world. You are capable of it now, which leads a lot into some of the expectations that they have of their career progression and the speed in which they might like that, but also serving your community. And so being very community minded and caring about the sort of inherent values of the companies in which they're interacting with is very important to millennials as well. Tend to be optimistic and confident. Very good at multitasking. Obviously, you can see here in the picture, and this is not uncommon to be on 4 different devices and communicating with 15 different people at any given time. Are going to be respectful, but definitely prefer informality. So, hey guys is just fine. Open-minded and non-judgmental as a rule. Are going to be digital natives. Speed of information and when and where they want it is very important. Again, being very community-focused, volunteerism. So I'm going to launch this poll here. And so as we learn about the millennials in our marketplace, I've been, thinking about that. As we have a large group, they being now are essentially the new adults, right? So they're well within their 30s. So that's pretty, that's like real adults, I'm curious how much buying power do you feel like, do you think that millennials have in this current market? Is it $100 billion, $300 billion, or $600 billion a year?
So about 65% of you have voted. So if you haven't voted, if you can jump in, let's shoot for that 100% again. That was awesome. I sound like a cheerleader. But I do love it when I see that 100%.
I know. All right, so we'll wait
real quick. We'll wait about 10 more seconds here. All right. Do you want me to share?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So it looks like most of you thought that $300 billion was the answer, and it looks like we have one more person who's a big winner as well. It's actually $600 million. I'm like, that number doesn't even sound real, but it is. And so the reason that I bring this up is just recognizing that even though they're the newcomers, and in a lot of ways, just like every new generation, right? So we tend to minimize or try to sort of, complain a little bit about the newest of the generations because they're new. And, one of my favorite quotes is by Socrates, who says that, children are terrible tyrants and they don't like going outside and they're not respectful to the elders,
Right.
And I would like to put that up and I'm like, what do you think said that? And, and we get everybody from, Dr. Spock to whatever. And I'm like, Socrates, so this is not new. But at the end of the day, I've always thought it's important, with regard to millennials, that they are absolutely going to be the driving force in our economy for a very long time. So understanding how to do that.
So I have a quick question, and this is such a baby boomer question, I'm sure. However, so thinking about that $600 million, do you have any billion? Yeah, big difference. Do you have any stats on, is that their money? Is that their parents' money? Is it a combination?
Well, and actually, I would say that at least based on the knowledge that I was gathering on that, it's current. I mean, they're out in the workforce, and it's their money now.
So, there's more billionaires in the millennial age group right now than my understanding. You are more well studied on this than there has ever been in any other cohort at this phase of life.
Well, and I think a lot of that's sort of achieved now, and and quite frankly, the barrier to entry in terms of business and making and spending money is never been lower. You know, with the internet, and I mean, I laugh, and we'll talk about the Gen Zs, but you know, my middle schooler, and I saw one on freaking Shark Tank, I think it was, this kid who's got a business plan, and it's for like millions of dollars. So you go out and do, you know, I mean, there's no lemonade stands anymore, apparently, you know, and so just the ability to be able to do that at any age and stage, if you have a great idea and you can get out there and do
well, what you can actually start in your basement with a couple of friends and a few computers is amazing.
It is. And so, you know,
and they have the creativity and the lack of fear.
And they are entrepreneurs very much so, more so than any other generation. So, and Gen Z, quite frankly, we'll see even more so. All right, so as we reach millennials, obviously a strong online, you know, some of this is going to be a little bit of a no-brainer, right? I mean, if they're digital native, you're going to want to make sure that you've got this online presence, but it's the diversification of it, right? So blogs and social media and making it shareable is very important. So thinking about how you present that information is very important. The visual aspect of it and making it mobile compatible is very important. So whereas some of the other cohorts might be more interested in having that information into their email box on their actual PC, this is the mobile generations. And now, you know, I would dare say the majority of the people in the world seem to have you know, where you have a cell phone, and I say the world, obviously, and it's the very first world thing to say, but, you know, it's a smartphone, and that platform is very important, and it needs to be very visual. Fun, fast, and cheerful is you know, sort of in alignment with that optimism. That's going to, you know, sort of appeal to millennials. You're going to want to give them customization, so the ability to pick and choose what they want. So this sort of idea of a la carte menus and being able to, you know, sort of pick and choose their services, how they receive them, all of those things. Customization is very important.
And, you know, even I remember recently reading something about, and I couldn't quote the exact statistic, of millennials that are actually purchasing while they're in line to purchase something else. So they may be in line at the grocery store and they're shopping on, you know, J. Crew, buying a pair of shoes for the weekend, you know.
Accomplished multitaskers.
Multitasking and having the ability to do that on, you know, on your phone.
Absolutely.
Is very important.
Isn't it interesting to note that we all do, right? So traditionalists, boomers, Gen Xers, we all can do those things, but probably more likely are the millennials who are very comfortable. I mean, as I discussed before, majority of the others would prefer to sit down and analyze something before making a decision. And one of the things here is you can benefit from this impulsiveness by offering additional items for purchase at the checkout point, you know. So, and obviously we all know that you're going to pick up that lip balm right there at the end, but not even so much that, but other, you know, add-ons and bonuses and things like that are definitely appealing to millennials. So the big thing is be where they are, when they want to be, and customize your approach to whatever is relevant to them. The more mobile, internet savvy your reps can be, and they're going to want to be able to know that they are talking to someone as technically savvy as they are and understand things in the same way that they do. But that's not really that different than any other cohort, right? So even the traditionalist who's looking for someone to be more patient still needs somebody to be technologically savvy to be able to help them, but it's, you know, you're going to school the way that you speak to each of those cohorts differently. Be accessible and fast. Be at the right hours, the right response times, that real-time support. So that's, you know, if someone's standing in line having trouble, you know, at Best Buy, they're more than likely going to be chatting with someone from the support, you know, while they're in line to buy whatever it is they are. And that type of, you see those pop-ups now for chat, you know, for support instead, you know, that those types of things are available rather than calling in. Those are all sort of at the advent of that. You want to also extend the experience. So give them the ability to connect with you in lots of different ways, obviously through social media and those types of things, but also giving the ability to, you know, interact with your company in other ways. So especially when it comes to, you know, community focus and things like that, there's lots of ways that you as a company can be a leader in your communities and extend the ability for those millennials to interact and connect with you. And I think about, local breweries here in the Charlottesville area doing lots of great, amazing outreach. And you think about who are they tapping into, and they're raising money for kids in need or whatever, but they're doing it through
we see that on Amazon now, where you can donate a portion of your money and you get to pick the charity. And so I think that speaks to all of us. Just like the thing that's important for us to remember is each of these things probably speak to all of us in one way or another. It's just that according to your cohort, there's going to be some things that speak to you even more.
Exactly.
So the Gen Zs, again, they're just beginning to enter the workforce, but are going to be commanding, if it's not their own money, at least a good portion of the influence of their parents' spending as well. And so they are very similar to millennials, obviously very digitally focused, actually are even more entrepreneurial and less concerned with sort of more formal education. They're more likely to start their own businesses. So just recognizing how that's going to be there. But they are also going to be, they're not quite yet, but should be the largest generation population segment in the United States. So, yeah. So when you're reaching Gen Zs, it turns out their BS meter's pretty good. So be authentic, be who you are, take them seriously. They do have buying power. I think it's somewhere in the range of $100 billion at the moment. Obviously not where the millennials are, but that's still fairly significant. And they are able to connect and have meaningful conversations on digital platforms, whereas they may not be, in previous times, generations weren't necessarily able to do that. They are thinking big. So don't be afraid to go global. Help them change the world. Keep it visual. Video tends to be something that's really important, storytelling. And you've got about, I think you said about 8 seconds to grab them. So being compelling from the get-go, but they are interested in it being real, something that's going to move them, something that is compelling. Be where they want to be, wherever they want it, engage personally and be loyal. So, and that's not personal like if they're walking into, the boutique to be able to have a conversation, but online now someone might give you feedback. Don't just ignore it, actually engage on that Facebook page and post to say, why and it may not be a very respectful interaction, if they're upset about something, but most customer service situations are not. But take the opportunity to engage there because it's there for others, especially in their age group who are paying attention. So make sure you're loyal and do what you can to keep them. Well, one of the things that we have seen, not in our business, but in other businesses that we have worked with and coached, is that when you do engage with them, they'll change their, how they've rated you, because then they feel like, the thing that's most important that we know with human beings is that we feel understood, not that we feel so right.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that you engage with them, interact with them is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, towards this transparency, and this is, culturally, I think we are all appreciating this, and there's been a lot of cohorts that I talked about today that would appreciate this sort of transparency and social responsibility. But, recognizing that today more than ever, it's important that as your company, what is setting you apart, what is making you better in the areas of customer service or treating your employees, and how are you talking about that? Also, is there a way that you are serving your community in a way that, truly in alignment and authentic to your company? And are you doing that on a regular basis? So if you can share that in a way that appeals to them, it's very important. Of course, it's easier said than done. And so at the end of this day, there's a couple of things that, we've got just a few minutes here, and I want to, take a moment here to invite any questions that you guys may have at this time as to things we've talked about now. But this is a lot of information, and really what it comes down to is customization towards preferred communication methods, preferred service expectations. And it's not rocket science, but it is also complicated. But there's a couple of simple things to remember. So this is our favorite platinum rule, Michelle. And so rather than the golden rule where you treat others as you would like to be treated, do unto others as you would like done, as the others would like done unto them. And so this really is, in other words, meet them where they are, right? So as in many areas of our lives, if you can have the awareness of someone else's thoughts, feelings, and preferences and can adjust your own style in order to meet them, you're more likely to reach them, you're more likely to keep them. And that is the same with your clients, your employees, your children, all of those things. Well, and just going to just some of the basics, and that is seek to understand before being understood. One of the habits of highly effective people. Absolutely. And the fact is, just going back to remind everyone of the first couple of slides we talked about, it really is all about your own perspective, your own biases, and that of the teams that you're leading that you need to be thinking about. So, most of you probably sat through this and thinking, yep, that's my cohort. Yep, that's what I like, and I know I highly identify with those things. But it's important, to think about, for example, if you have a team of millennial sales representatives or support, and your client base is more in the traditionalist or boomer cohort, recognizing that you may not be a millennial, but you might be, and that some of the ways that you're going to communicate, the formality of which you're going to communicate, the means in which you're going to communicate, both from a sales and support, need to be adjusted from your own preferences as a millennial. And so it is all about perspective. So one of my favorite things to do is just sort of, when I'm thinking about this, or we go through it in a more interactive classroom point is, well, what are some things that millennials are going to be happy to do? Is, quick text back to say, hope that worked out great, or, that kind of thing. Those types of immediate responses that can be appreciated, but the formality of which you're doing that will probably be appreciated in an email for the boomers or traditionalists, or, or a follow-up in, something more formal. Likewise, with, we just had a question come in.
So I'm going to read this.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Bill, for sending this in. It says, would you say that values are similar across generations, but the difference is in their interpretation of those values?
I think that's a really interesting question. And the thing about values is that, and I know you know too, Bill, they really vary depending on who you're brought up with and your family, and maybe even in the area of the world in which you were brought up. But so the values of some of them, I do feel like that there is some misinterpretation of some values that, like, for example, the millennials have been often called the me generation, this idea that they tend to be very self-focused and not giving, of their time, energy, or resources to anyone but themselves. Well, it turns out that the boomers were the first me generation. And so I do feel like there is there's consistency in values, but the interpretation often has to do with, and I think in some ways, it's a focus on life stage. And, they're just like Socrates said, sometimes we all think that the younger generations don't value the same thing, but in fact it just looks a little different for a while.
Yeah, which would go to, I think, what Bill had said. However, I think, too, that we sometimes forget and have to be reminded, especially if we're a little bit older, of the globalization and the values that we have when you think about where a person is raised. I mean, even just right here in the United States, right? The way a person was raised, were they raised with any sort of money, or did they not have money? Something that simple. Were they raised by a single parent, no parent, two-parent household where whatever you needed was accessible to you? So we obviously have millennials and Gen Zers that have been raised in that variety. Exactly. And so, there are going to be some crossovers in the different cohorts. And this, it really is, I like what you said, Stacia, when you open this, we're not trying to stereotype, but we are trying, just like when we separate out the different personalities, there are crossovers, obviously, and there are exceptions to every rule. However, studying this does help us when we have identified our target audience on how to meet them where they are.
Absolutely. And when it comes to, the perspective that we, and just to sort of with Boomers, talking to Gen X or Millennials, I get understanding that perhaps they can relax their formality or focus on some of the faster pace and being a little more and meeting them where they need to be as well. So if you all, we have just a few minutes here. If I'm going to move on. If you would all have a situation that you'd like to share with us, that you, just going to pop back here. Where you felt like a generational preference, either for you or for, one of your clients, either was really considered or it wasn't, and how that impacted you. I was going to share with you a funny story from actually just past weekend. So I have a sister who's just a few years younger than I am, and we were adulting, even though I was visiting for vacation, and she was online getting, bills paid and that kind of thing, and she kept saying, and she's a Gen Xer, I just don't want to talk to anybody to pay this bill. But it really struck me because it was her preferred communication method. She wanted to get it done fast, and so, and that level of customer service, there was a bunch of times where she had to get called back, and that was frustrating. But it might have been the preferred method to actually speak to a person and make sure it was physically handled by a human being by any number of other cohorts. So I just thought it was very interesting. So if anyone else has anything that they'd like to share, by all means in the chat window or the questions. But given that we have just a few minutes, you feel free to send those on to us at info@MSBCoach as well. So in closing here, there's a lot to consider here, but if I was to, give you some advice about where to start, thinking about who your customer is, which generation of customers cares about the value that you add, and that might be a service or a good, but, really focusing on, if you are trying to reach all cohorts, good luck to you. But if your service or your good is really specifically focused in some of the others, in one or two of the cohorts, then focus there. Is there a way that you can offer your service or add value in the way that you provide whatever it is you're doing that would appeal to someone? And just keeping in mind that if you're targeting them, be clear about who that audience is. You don't have to cover all the bases if you're not trying to, so better focus your target. Be aware of your organizational bias. So it's not just you as a leader, but it's also those that you are leading, and so how they're interacting with the public, so to speak, and your clients it's going to be important to have this type of awareness, and ensure that everyone understands these generational perspectives, the expectations and preferred communication methods, so that it is less likely that they're going to unintentionally by surely acting in their own preference. Mm-hmm. So those are my parting words, and it looks like 2 minutes to go, so I'll let you go.
Yeah. Well, Stacia, thank you
Absolutely.
so much. This was very insightful. So I hope all of you that joined us today would agree. And of course, we just had an hour, and we were covering a lot of information in that hour. So Stacia, thank you so much for just packing all of that in. For those of you, if this is your first time to join us, just a reminder, we do offer these lunch and learns completely complimentary, and we invite you to invite other people, have people in your team join. It's a great time to grab everybody together. We have some people that put it up on the big screen, and it's once a quarter a time for their learning. But we also, if you're looking for something more, that is what we do as an organization. So if you are looking for a custom developed program, or if you're looking just for someone to come in and lead a retreat, strategic planning, do executive coaching, leadership coaching, this is what we focus on. So we would love to talk more with you about that if that's something that you're interested in.
And I would just also like to remind you that we do, in fact, record these webinars. So if something was insightful for you today and you'd like to share it with your team, it will be up on our website in the next few days.
Yes, absolutely. And so, of course, we do have classes in just customer service. We also have classes in just the different generations, and we have classes just like this that are a combination of both of those, as well as many other classes that we offer. So just to remind you of the upcoming webinars that we have, June, September, and December, for your critical thinking skills, organizational commitment and stewardship, and then leading with a spirit of ownership are the three that we have left for 2017. Remember the 3 books that we have. You can buy them separately or buy them all together on Amazon, either for yourself or for leaders that you're investing in. They're, again, self-leadership, team leadership, and organizational leadership. And then our contact information. So I know we went pretty rapidly. We were going 55 and a 45, I believe. That's because we wanted to get all of this information to you. But you're able to see your Stacia's contact information, my contact information. If you want to register for some of the other webinars that are coming up, just go to the MSBCoach.com site. Connect with us on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We would just love to connect with you and talk more with you. If any questions do pop up, as we had mentioned in your mind, please don't hesitate to reach out. Or if you want to know more about our services, please reach out to us. But again, thank you for being a part. We were happy to be a part of your day today with you, whatever time zone you're in. And we look forward to next time. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Stacia.
Thank you.